guys, it's Cece, and today I'm going to be doing my February wrap-up. So in February, I participated in a month-long reading challenge hosted by It's Jane Lindsay. If you do not watch her channel, you should be watching it. I will leave links to her channel down in the description below. But Feminist Lit February was all about reading with feminist lit in mind. There were a number of challenges, all of which you can hear about more in my TBR if you want to go back and watch that. I'll be honest, I did not complete every challenge. I read a total of 4 books in February, and I did everything pretty much except for the feminist nonfiction challenge. I never got to that. But it was an unnaturally good reading month for me if you don't include how much I read, because of the 4 books that I read in February, 3 of them were 5-star reads. That is unprecedented. It's unheard of. 3 consecutive 5-star books, but I am here today to do mini reviews of those 4 books that I read. We are going to start with my least favorite, work up to my absolute most favorite of the month. If you want to know more about my reading month, my process as I went along, I was also vlogging for the entire month of February. 3 of those vlogs are up currently, the 4th one will be out soon, but you can follow me along there. And, yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's get started. So, starting down at my least favorite book of the month, the only book I didn't rate 5 stars was Nothing Happened by Molly Booth. This was an early ebook that was given to me by the publishers, and it comes out in May. It was one of my most anticipated books of the entire year, and it was adorable. It was cheesy, but adorable. So, Nothing Happened is a modern retelling of Much Ado About Nothing by William Shakespeare, which is my favorite Shakespeare play. I love the comedies, it's always been a preference of mine, but Much Ado About Nothing is my favorite one. So this follows sisters Bea and Hannah, and their parents own a summer camp called Camp Dogberry. Every summer they are counselors at this camp, along with numerous others who have become their friends over the years. These other counselors include Claudia, who Hannah has been harboring a tiny crush on for the past year, as well as Ben, who Bea definitely has some history with, but none of them will talk about it until their friends decide to work together and trick them into liking each other. Here's what I will say. If you know the plot of Much Ado About Nothing, absolutely nothing that happens in this book will surprise you. It is following it pretty much identically plot-wise. Every time there was a small conversation, I'd be like, oh, what's happening? Then I would remember a moment in the play and be like, oh, okay, I know what's happening. It's also deeply cheesy and super dramatic, which is exactly what Shakespeare would have wanted. Like, I'll be honest with you, it's all about miscommunication and teen angst and drama, and that's kind of what the original play is, so, like, you can't get through the story without it. Sometimes it felt like a little bit much. It was a little overwhelming in context of a YA contemporary instead of a stage play, but I had a ridiculous amount of fun reading it. This book is also incredibly diverse. Hannah and Claudia are both girls who are involved in a relationship. They are kind of not totally sure on labels. Hannah hasn't decided whether or not bisexuality or pansexuality fits better for her. Claudia is also kind of undecided. She occasionally likes men, but mostly women. Bea is adopted and was originally from Ethiopia. There are a number of other POC side characters. It is just like a delightfully diverse story, and it's Shakespeare that includes queer characters, which is what made me want to read it in the first place. So if you're looking for a lot of fun, if you like Shakespeare, if you're okay with incredibly dramatic YA contemporary, then I definitely do recommend this book. It was a little bit too much for me, and the ending wrapped up and I was like, this worked a little bit better, these conventions worked a little bit better in a very old play than in a YA contemporary, but I still had a ton of fun reading it, and I wound up giving it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Now moving on to my 3 5-star books, first of which is Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. This is the second book in the Six of Crows duology, the sequel to Six of Crows, clearly, and I absolutely loved it. So when I originally read Six of Crows, I gave it 4 stars. I liked it, but I just wasn't getting as into it as everyone else said I would. But this book This book took characters who I kind of cared about, made me care about them more than I ever thought I could, and then just made me worry for 530 pages. This is also an incredibly diverse book, in case you don't know. They're a collection of 6 main characters, multiple of whom are people of color. Kaz uses a cane. 2 of the characters, well, okay, 2 confirmed in this series are queer. I think Leigh Bardugo has kind of confirmed another one of them outside the series. Nina as being bisexual, I think. Nina is also fat and wonderful. I love Nina. Kaz is my favorite character in this series by far. I think he's a remarkable character, but they're all wonderful. I love Nina and Inej's friendship. It's one of the best examples of friendship between girls in books that I've ever read. It's so deeply delightful. There are these 2 women who come from strikingly different backgrounds, and sometimes that causes issues between them, but they're also really good friends, so they always work it out. They're always there for each other. Jesper and Wylan are wonderful and have these really interesting and different personalities that work really well together. The only person I don't really care about and didn't really care about even in this book was Matthias. But I don't think I'm alone in that. I don't think I'm the only person who never fell for Matthias. This was delightful. It was smart and interesting and had... The reason I love this series is because often in YA, especially YA fantasy, there will be these characters who would not have a problem with murder, but they do because you're not supposed to root for murderers, especially in YA, and so they'll be like, oh man, if we kill this person, we're just as bad as them, and I've always been frustrated by that entire way of thinking in YA, because sometimes these characters are not going to think that way, and that's what this book gave me. It gave me a collection of people who murder people, and they're like, well, that was what we had to do, so I'm not going to feel bad about it, I'm just going to be a murderer, and... it's so interesting. Even though they're all kind of mean, they all also really support each other and care about each other really deeply. It's just a wonderful collection of characters that's like a found family, which is my jam. And I absolutely loved this book, which is why I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It was so good. Next up we have Piecing Me Together by Renee Watson. Now this book is gorgeous. It is more of a character study than having a particular plot. A lot of the times the chapters come across more as vignettes than chapters. They're not, but sometimes they kind of feel that way. This is about a girl named Jade, and she lives with her mother and her uncle, and they are incredibly poor, but Jade is able to go to a really nice school on the other side of town on scholarship. At the school, she always feels like she stands out as the only person who doesn't have a lot of money, as one of the only people of color, and then she winds up being involved in this program called Woman to Woman, which is a mentorship program for girls in the city, and they are matched up with a mentor, an older woman, who's just sort of supposed to be their friend, their mentor. But what it comes down to is that Jade is this character who is incredibly tired of people singling her out, of people thinking that she is a person who needs to be fixed. I cried through like the last 40 pages of this book. It's just so in-depth and gorgeous and focuses so deeply on relationships between women also who come from incredibly different backgrounds. One of the main relationships is that Jade's mentor is another black girl who went to her high school, but instead of feeling like she's able to bond with this girl because they were both in a minority at the school, Maxine comes from an incredibly rich family, so there is this really intense divide between them where Jade still feels like she can't relate. This book just winds up being a beautiful story about the power of blackness and the strength of black women together. It's absolutely gorgeously written. I absolutely want to read Renee Watson's other book that came up before this. I think This Side of Home is maybe what it's called. I definitely want to read it. Bare minimum, this book is about a girl named Jade who is black, who comes from poverty, and who is fat, and is tired of people thinking that any of those things mean that she is less than anyone else. It's just fantastic. I don't know why this didn't get more hype when it came out last year, but I'm begging you to go and pick up a copy. It was beautiful, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And the final book I'm going to talk about today is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Oh, how I fell in love with this book. So this book is about Monique and Evelyn Hugo, and Evelyn is this incredibly famous Hollywood actress. She has aged, she's kind of alone, and she's finally decided to come forward and tell her story, but the person she chooses to tell her story to is this somewhat unknown writer named Monique, and she's kind of confused why she's been pulled out of obscurity for this task, but she accepts the job and decides to listen to Evelyn's story as it unfolds. So there are two women at the heart of this story, Monique and Evelyn. Monique is a biracial woman, and Evelyn Hugo is a bisexual Cuban woman, and they're two of the most complex characters I've ever read about. They feel like deeply real people because there are so many phases of their relationship together, their friendship, maybe moments when they don't feel like friends, and this book is heartbreaking. I read part of it on a plane, and on the plane I was crying. I almost paid for Wi-Fi on the plane so that I could get on Goodreads or Twitter and be like, why did you people make me read this? I'm so upset. That is not the only time I cried. I cried multiple times at the end of this book too. Evelyn Hugo's story is heartbreaking and difficult, but like, so gorgeous. I love the storytelling tradition of in books when an older woman tells her story to a younger woman. I think that there are so many possibilities there in terms of relationship, in terms of passing on a narrative, and it's just something that I really love. It's why I loved The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. I have a few other books on my TBR that have the same sort of idea. I just think that it is a way to frame a story that I'm really interested in, and this book broke me in 100 different ways. And it made me cry, and it made me laugh. This book has not been overhyped. I will 100% say that. It is completely deserving of all of the people yelling about it on book Twitter, on Goodreads. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. I can't wait to read more by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I can't wait to reread this one. I loved it. I loved it very, very much, and that's why I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and it has definitely earned a place on my new favorites of all time list. And those are all of the books that I read in the month of February. You're curious what the challenge breakdown was for these books? So there were a number of challenges, so I'll just go through these real fast. The first challenge was to read a piece of feminist fiction. Any of these books would have fit that. I specifically chose Piecing Me Together as that challenge, but anything that I read would have fit. Feminist nonfiction, which is the challenge I didn't complete. There was an Own Voices challenge. Also a number of books would have fit this. I specifically picked Crooked Kingdom for its disability rep. A book by a Black woman author. I originally said I was going to read Akata Witch by Nnedi Okorafor. I didn't quite finish it before the end of the month, but Piecing Me Together does fit that challenge as well. And then a feminist freebie, and my choice for that was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have read any of the books that I talked about, please yell with me about them down in the comments below. I would love to talk more about any and all of these books. I really look forward to reading your comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!